Good morning. I'm Elaine Manzi, Democratic Services Officer to the Hertfordshire Local Government Pension Scheme Pension Board. The two-year chairmanship of this board from the employer representative side completed in July 2025. The position of vice chair is also vacant. So in the absence of a chair and a vice chair, it falls to me as representative of the Director of Law and Governance to open this meeting and undertake the election of a chair, and the incoming chair will then undertake the election of the vice chair. Before I proceed any further, I will read out the following announcement. Attendance at this meeting. The Council will hold this meeting electronically. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link on the Council's website for them to do so. Members of the board are asked to keep the microphone switched off until called to speak and switch their microphones off once they have finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members wish. However, if you experience connection or other technical issues, it may help to switch your camera off. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raise hand function within Teams. The chat function should not be used unless for voting. At the end of the debate of each item, there will be a vote. Voting members only and not subs should vote using the chat function. Breaks of at least 15 minutes will be held every 2 hours and will be taken after a speaker in the debate has finished speaking. If we are voting, the vote will be concluded before the break is taken. Other breaks will be incorporated as appropriate. Okay, now on to the main meeting. So item 1 is the election of a chair and a vice chair for this meeting, or for this board, I should say. As stipulated in the Constitution, further to the conclusion of a 2-year tenureship of an employer representative as chair, a member representative needs to be elected for a 2-year term as chairman of this board. Gareth Wall, the deferred member of the pension scheme and existing member of the board, has offered to stand for the role of chair. So I'll call for a member of the board to nominate Gareth as chair of the board for a 2-year tenureship concluding in July 2027. Would anyone like to nominate Gareth, please?
I will nominate Gareth.
Thank you, Gail. Please, can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
So is that yourself,
Liz
Liz?
Needham.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Okay. Are there any other nominations for chairman of the board? Okay, there are none. As there are no other nominations, Gareth Wall will chair the board until July 2027. Gareth, congratulations, and I hand the meeting over to you now for the election of the vice chair.
Thanks, Elaine, and morning, everyone. As stipulated in the Constitution, as member representative is holding the chairmanship, an employee representative needs to be elected as a 2-year term as vice chair of the board. Jolyon Adams, the school and academy's employer representative, has offered to stand in the role as vice chair. So I call for a member of the board to nominate Jolyon Adams as vice chair for a 2-year tenureship concluding in July 2027. Please can I have a nomination?
I'm happy to nominate Jolyon.
Many thanks, Brian. Please can I have a seconder?
Yeah, camera's not coming on. There we go. Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm happy to second.
Many thanks, Sharon. Are there any other nominations? Take that as a no. As there are no other nominations, Jolyon Adams will vice chair the board until July 2027. Thanks everyone for getting through that. Next we have the apologies for people who aren't able to attend. So we've received apologies from Martin Keenan, Rob McCarthy, Penelope Hill, Sarah Ansell and James Kidd. And Brian Kane will be substituting for James Kidd at this meeting and will therefore have voting rights. Just working through the agenda, we've got declaration of interests. So can I ask members to declare any financial or pecuniary interests related to specific matters on the agenda? I'll take that as nothing to declare. and we can move on to minutes. Can we, you all received the minutes in the pack, and can we ask the board to confirm part 1 minutes for anyone who was in attendance at the last meeting?
Confirmed.
Thank you, and Julian, thank you. And now I need to, thanks, Brian. And now I'll hand over to Alison Sharp for the employer risk and governance paper.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Employer Risk and Governance report for April to June 2025. This risk report focuses specifically on the risks associated to individual employers of the fund. During the quarter, the number of risks in the red category increased to 9, which is an increase from 7 in the last quarter. However, 3 of the risks are not true red risks, as they are in the category due to an amalgamation of green and or amber risks. The breakdown of the 6 true red risks are shown in Table 3 of the report. This details 2 of the red risks, which relate to ceased employers with outstanding deficits, and the other 4 relate to employers with no indemnity arrangements. And these are historic employers who joined the fund at a time when regulations did not require admission bodies to have security arrangements. We are currently working with Barnett Waddingham to complete a risk analysis for admitted bodies, which will look to provide solutions to minimise their risks. That's all I was going to highlight from the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Alison. Any questions for Alison on the report?
Hi, Gal.
Yeah, hi. Just to clarify on that point of the amalgamation of the amber and green risks, is that a new approach? I thought previously, and I wasn't at the last meeting, that the red risks were true red risks that we were looking at. So are we looking at like for like? Is that a new, or is this a new approach?
And no, we do just focus on the red risks, the true red risks. It's just how the register logs, it totals up the number of points that an employer has. So if they've got like 4 green and some amber, that would end in a total score of a red risk, but they're not actually a concern to the fund. It's just I just wanted to highlight to you that although they are showing as a red risk, they're not a concern to the fund.
Yes, I understand that. I just thought I hadn't seen that before, and I wondered whether we were still looking at things the same way. So obviously there's no change to red risks, but it just seems that we might have more if there's, amalgamations.
No, it's always been that way. I just think this quarter there was a few more showing in the amalgamation.
Right,
and so it probably stands out a bit more than.
Yes, that's right, because it's really good to see the numbers going down, I must say. Thank you very much.
That's okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gail, and thanks, Alison. Any other questions for Alison? No, thanks, Alison. We'll get on to item 4, the Hertfordshire LGPS Q1 2025.
Sorry, Chair, can I just stop you? We just need to put in the chat.
We need to vote on it.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Sorry, apologies. Thank you. First time. Yeah. So I guess what we do, noting it.
Yes, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. If everyone can note in the chat.
That's noted. Thank you.
Many thanks. Okay, so on to item 4, the performance report. Is that Chris, I believe?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. This is the Q1 report for the period April through to June of 25. I'll just go through some highlights of the report, pull out a couple of few points, give you an update on some of the projects and take questions at the end, or indeed if you want to raise hands as we go through. So overall, casework performance was 99% for the quarter, sort of consistent with previous Q4. So a good position, tracking nice and green on all the relevant case types there. We, during the quarter, completed more cases than we received. That's a general evening out. I think in Q4 were the other way round, and that tends to happen throughout the year. You'll get some variances on that. So that evens out, and that was a good position at the end of the quarter. In terms of employer retirement notifications, I think we're definitely seeing improvements of the timeliness of submitting retirement notifications, which is obviously good from a member experience. 38% on time as an average over the quarter, which I think is the best quarter for the last 12 months. It was 21% for Q4. So we're seeing improvements in that. The knock-on impact of that is that 74% on average retirees were receiving a payment within 30 days of notification, which is great. That's slightly up on the previous quarter, and there were more payments made. So that was really quite pleasing as well. Most of that is around those where there is no AVC. I think we've said before, where there's an AVC, the disinvestment can sometimes cause delays. And it's worth highlighting that our retirements team are working closely with AVC providers to see whether there's any improvements and changes that can be made in that space that ultimately benefit the elapsed time and the member experience. Now, back to the employer retirement notifications, our employer engagement team have just started to roll out an employer relationship strategy whereby they're going to engage and make sure we're aligned to what the officers are doing with employers as well. We're focused initially on employers where there's over 1,000 active members, and we're going to talk to them about, getting the notifications to us nice and promptly, and actually highlighting why that's the case. But it's a two-way session and quite collaborative in terms of trying to understand some of the challenges that employers and payroll providers might have themselves. We all know that if you're on a month's notice, trying to notify someone of leaving or approaching retirement within 30 days is quite challenging in that regard. So it's trying to understand those and work together to see what we can do to improve. Meetings are starting to be put in the diary, I think, across LPPA as a whole. I think there's about just under 30 employers that we'll work with. I suspect some of those are Hertfordshire related ones. Apologies, I don't know them off the top of my head. So I think that's a positive move. Moving on to contact centre performance, we just slipped over the 4 minutes target for average wait time. That's largely down to seasonal peaks, with it being that first quarter where you've got lots of pensioners accessing payslips, P60s, and then we also had on our police and fire clients, McLeod was at the 31st of March, so we get a lot of queries heightened at that time. So that just includes the wait time, but it's good to note that it's back on track in more recent months. Customer satisfaction, 74% for Q1, pretty comparable. This is contact centre, I should say, with Q4. Just under 10% dissatisfied overall. I'm going to say that's a slight improvement. We'd obviously still like it to be better, and that percentage, there's still plenty of room to improve there, I think. On the active to retirements, we had a drop in the number of responses. No particular reason for that. It does fluctuate, and generally they're not excessively high returns, but I think when you compare with benchmarking, they're not hugely off. Even personally, I find that quite a surprise, but we have challenged that, and that is the case. 54% satisfied, which is a slight drop. So we'll keep an eye on that, because obviously we want satisfaction to be in a better place. In terms of projects, just wanted to update you quickly on the ESIP project. So that's the Efficiency and Service Improvement Programme. That's where we've been looking at use of automation, so standard functionality that exists in UPM that we're configuring and putting into practice to bring automation. So you've had updates on some of this in the past. We started with deferred retirement quotations. That's been live for over a year now. and the stats are showing that we have 50% fully automated on that process. So that's quite good. We're seeing examples of people getting their quotes within seconds rather than days if it was the old paper trail. So that's quite positive. We went live with an online retirement form for members. So this cuts out the to and fro of perhaps members not filling out a form correctly. It also means that they're prompted while doing it live it's got checks on certain fields to make sure that the data is validated. So that speeds things up generally. Statistic wise, we had 70% response rate on the online form, which compares to 40% for paper. So being online, we're getting more forms back, which is good. And then the speed at which they're coming back, we're getting responses within 6 days online on average, which compares to 33 days in paper. So again, I keep mentioning it, member experience wise, that's going to improve things and the timescales quite considerably. More recently, we went live with automated deferred retirement payment process. And we are now able to fully have members of the deferred status go online and automated end to end. And we have seen some examples of cases that are going through in the entirety that way. You hope you'd be pleased to hear that part of that is a bank account name verification. So by that, we always had the sort code and account number check to show that they were valid. We've now introduced the name verification. So much like you would have on an app if you were setting up a pay, it validates that the name is correct as well. So that should provide some additional insurance from a fraud perspective for payments when we're looking at automation. The final thing, and the thing that we're looking at on ESIP currently, is an online leaver form for employers. I don't believe that's for the main payroll for Hertfordshire. I think that works slightly differently. That, like the online form for members, will cut out a lot of data errors and to-in and fro-in with pay queries. So the form will have built-in tolerances and it will check those. And if you exceed them, for example, on pay, the employer will be prompted to confirm that the number is indeed correct and accept the tolerance excess, or they get the opportunity to correct it. So like I say, it stops that to and fro. The form is more simplified. You haven't got to fill out boxes where we know who people are already, names and things like that. So that's not going to be just a drop to employers. Our engagement team will roll that out. I think they've already given them a heads up it's coming, and as we do so, we'll communicate and work with employers to support them through that new process. In other projects, so McLeod was a big project, and I think in the papers there was a summary of the annual benefit statement production. But just to recap that, as at the 31st of August, we issued statements to 98.7% of the population. So that was 98.4% for active and 98.9% for deferred. That was a really pleasing position, with it being a more complex year with McLeod this year. I'll go through the numbers slowly because it can get quite confusing. But for the active population, we issued 97% of the McLeod eligible statements. So that was hitting a number of the population. 6,000 of those included McLeod underpin information. Those where it didn't include the underpin, they still got a line that says that they were in scope for McLeod, but at this point we were unable to include that figure, and they'll get that the following year. On the deferred, the percentage was 98.3. So really good numbers. That exceeded what we were targeting for issue, so we were quite pleased with that result. So that was on the benefit statement side for active and deferred. The other side of McLeod is the retrospective members, so the pensioners, deceased cases, transfers. We've assessed now 75% of those eligible for that. And to add some context to that, of those 75% we've assessed, 95% there is no adjustment due. I mean, that just replays what we've always known about McLeod. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into this, but actually correctional payment to individuals is smaller in number. So that's 4.7% where payment is due. and that's our next priority within the project, to make those payments by the end of the year to the pensioners. And then the final project there to mention is Pensions Dashboard. So all public sector schemes have to connect by the 31st of October. Unfortunately, we've had to report to officers that Civica had a tangible risk to meeting that date, and I've had confirmation this week that they won't be able to meet that date. Now, that's obviously it's not great news. It's a date that's been missed, but to put that in context, we've spoken to the TPR, and the TPR say that doesn't result in a breach. And I think officers are writing to TPR just to make sure we go through the right governance of informing them. There's no impact on the scheme. The codes are still valid until January. No impact on members because they don't connect for another year or so by latest estimations. So like I say, it's not great that we've missed the date, and we're talking to Civica. Civica are yet to confirm a specific date for delivery, but it's certainly not going to be beyond the end of this year. It's not a month's thing. So that's just a quick overview on that one. And then I was just going to finish just before questions and confirm that LPFA have had a good year in the trophy cabinet. We've recently won Best Scheme Communications at Professional Pensions Awards and Pensions Admin Award at the recent LAPF, and I think we're up for another one as well. So Joe's office is getting nice and busy in terms of her trophy cabinet, but it's a nice reward for a lot of hard effort that the teams continue to put in behind the scenes. That's I've probably gone on longer than I thought, but open to questions.
That's great. Many thanks, Chris, and
No
congratulations on the awards.
Thank you.
Dolian, go ahead.
Sharon was first. I'm happy to let her go in case.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Sharon, if you want, and then Dolian.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't mind, but yeah. So yeah, thank you for the detailed report, and well done for all the stats. It's great to keep reading all the positive news. So well done to the team, and of course, congratulations as well on all the awards. It was good to read as well the update on the data project and the plan for a data tracing exercise, because we are keen to sort of re-establish contact with those large numbers of deferred members in particular. So it's good to read that update. I wanted to return to your update on the McLeod ABS situation. So you've mentioned about, you've given us the stats for the 31st of August. So I wondered if you had any update on the sort of up to 2% of actives and deferreds that didn't receive an annual benefit statement at the 31st of August. So what's happened to those since? And if they still haven't had a statement, what the comms plan is to let them know what's happening around that. Thank you.
Okay, so firstly, which wasn't your actual question, so those that got what I call a standard ABS, so the McLeod eligible population that didn't have underpin information, they'll just have that by next year's statement. There's no intention to write to them again. They got a benefit statement. So your actual question was the gap of the people that didn't get anything. So we continue to work through data queries, etc. So bit by bit, statements will get issued as and when before next year. I think we cut off around the end of June, so we'll continue to do it. There isn't a definitive plan with dates in for doing that. It's as and when data gets cleared that we then run the statements. So I definitely made a note already mentally, and to provide an update through our regular reporting, whether that's to Taryn and team through our monthly reports, or indeed this group through the quarterly reports. We will provide updates in future reports. Yeah.
Thank you. So just another question related to that, if I may, Chair.
Yeah.
Does that meet disclosure requirements?
So I'm going to say yes, but ultimately fund decision. So we work towards a target of 95% for the benefit statements, with that being a view that percentage is I can't spit my words out. It's all about materiality, and I think if you hit 95%, generally it's perceived that is not material and therefore not reportable. Taryn, I don't know if you want to add to that.
That is right. We've never hit 100%. We normally are aiming for over 95%, and that is reported to the pensions regulator in their return each year. I think disclosure is slightly different, so I'm going to have a look at the disclosure regulations and just confirm.
Thank you. I'm just concerned about people that haven't received anything and make sure that we meet those requirements. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharon, and thanks, Ryan. Jolyon, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering about the pensions dashboard connection. Obviously, you said there's, Civica has said that connection is not going to be in place for the deadline of the end of this month, and the pension regulator seems relatively relaxed about that. But I was wondering, at what point does it become a kind of a harder deadline? So I think you said that's not going to be considered a breach now, but it might be some months until that's fixed, rectified by Civica. I'm just wondering, it might be okay now, but at what point do you think it's going to become more of an issue that it's over and it becomes a breach or it becomes an issue? Is there any kind of insight on that?
So it will become an issue in January at the point at which the codes that we have to use expire. So in some ways, it was one of the good bits of news is that there is a code and it didn't expire on the 31st of October. They are valid until January. At the point where they expire, it will become an issue. Now, we're not expecting it to be that long. Without getting too technical, the issue was around the scope of a pen test. So it's not a given technical failing in the sense that there's something wrong with the connectivity. It's the governance and the checks that go around that, and the delay is all around having to go through that pen test again with the correct scope and arranging third-party pen testers, etc., etc. So we're not anticipating it, but yeah, to your point, once those codes expire, it's going to have closer attention because you're going to need new codes and how long do they last for, etc. So we're not expecting it to go beyond the end of January, certainly before, the end of November, certainly before the end of the year. So that isn't a problem, but yeah.
Okay.
I'd be concerned if we hit January and those codes expire, because that's a whole different performance to get those extended or renewed.
Okay.
Thanks, Jolyn. Thanks, Chris. I just had, I haven't seen any other hands. So
there is one, Chair.
Sorry.
Gail's got her hand.
Oh, Gail, ahead, Gail. Sorry, I don't know why I can't see these things. Go ahead, Gail, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Chris. I just wanted to sticking with the dashboard, just a little bit of nitty gritty on that. There's a review on the pack, page 74, a data quality overview review where it's showing problems with national insurance numbers and dates of birth. So 2 points about that. One is that it's showing more potential problems there than the common data score has been showing us. And two, what is going to be the recourse for solving those problems when we did the GMP reconciliation process? HMRC's records were available for matching. How do these kind of problems get solved, particularly something like a national insurance number? Is a DWP record available for matching?
So some of that will be around temporary national insurance numbers and the different formats that are used. But the data project, which is, the good news is it forms part of our BAU now. So there is a data improvement plan. A lot of it was about ensuring controls are in place to turn the tap off, if you like, in terms of preventing incorrect data coming in. NIs for the temporary ones will always, temporary NIs are legitimate in some cases, but the data cleanse will focus now. We've got through the initial McLeod piece and the valuation. It will now focus on those things for dashboard. And we're thinking that the members won't start accessing till early 2027. That's what it's looking like at the moment. So we've got a year to work on that, and the plan is focused on those elements for connectivity and presenting the data. Things like ensuring that you've got your deferred benefits calculated as well and valued at the right time, so that when they go on, they can see the value. So there's still plenty of work to do, not just for the matching, but also the data that then is seen by members.
Yeah. What are you saying that the data overview that's being shown to us now is a very preliminary cut? Because, as I say, there look a lot more problems there than are showing in the common data score that we see each quarter.
I'd have to go and ask the data experts. I can sit here and give a view, but I wouldn't want to give an incorrect one if I'm honest. So I can take that away. Yeah,
I think the criteria is slightly different for the dashboard than it is for common data, and that's why on that the pension dashboard data checks, it's highlighting more. But LPPA have introduced all of these dashboards to be able to identify those errors so they can clear them in time for the launch of the pensions data, pension dashboard, when it's live for the public. It doesn't have to be completed by connection date. It needs to be cleared for when it's launched for the public.
Yes.
Yeah, the common and the scheme specific are slightly different to the criteria for connectivity and the scheme specific. Certainly, if you look at the big numbers there, they're usually around pay. And if they're preventing calculation of benefits, then there would be an issue in what they're displaying. But we'll continue to work on those anyway. And then the actual appendix to the quarterly report, which went into quite a bit of granular detail, to be fair, some of it not the easiest to follow, but there are examples of data where it was addresses. Now, it might be some simple bulk fixes are possible where we don't hold data in the right field in our system for getting it. It doesn't mean we haven't got it. So postcode might be in address line 4, not in the postcode field, etc. So there hopefully are some quicker wins in that. And then when you correct in the address area, I think it is where you correct one error, you might actually be correcting multiple by resolving the address as a whole, if that makes sense. So we're not too concerned about it from a dashboard piece, but there is work to do. No denying that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
May I just add that we have notified the pensions regulator of the delay for connection, and they have acknowledged our notification and confirmed it's not a breach. But as Chris stated, they do expect us to join within 3 months to ensure that those registration codes are still live. So I'll keep members of the board updated with any updates that come through with revised connection dates, etc.
And just one final piece for me on the dashboard, just for absolute clarity, it doesn't just affect Hertfordshire, it doesn't just affect LPPA clients, it's whoever uses Civica as the ISP for connectivity. So there will be other schemes that use their system for it. So it affects, it's not just Hert. I don't think that makes it any better, but you're not alone. There's pressure from a number of us to get it done.
Thanks, Gail, Chris and Taryn. Any other questions for Chris while we're on this item? I had a couple of points which were probably more just for thinking for future, which was just on the data side. So on being a bit of a data nerd, on the satisfaction, do we know anything around the drivers or the breakdown of the demographics? And I guess to some extent that 30% who are not responding to the online survey things, is it are we able to get a bit more information about who that is, whether that makes a difference in terms of comms or anything like that, or targeting or anything along those lines? Both, I know you were saying on the satisfaction you'd want that to improve, and so is there analysis done on that? Thanks.
The percentages aren't standout. It's a consistent theme that we have across all our clients. The response rates, I've never seen anyone over certainly any more over, no one over 40, usually around the 30% in terms of returns, that is. Some of the satisfaction scores are better where those do return. If I take it from a slightly different aspect, if you look at our complaints, the underlying themes in that area would largely be around delays. So everything that we're doing in the ESIP program to try and speed up elapsed time and all those contributing factors, I think is definitely the right things to be doing, and that will help alleviate those complaints and hopefully improve the customer satisfaction. So they kind of go in hand. We're looking at the right things. I think the other bit that came out of complaints is the management of expectation and communication. So I think there was one in there that came out that was how the contact centre update members when they call. So that's a theme as well, if you like, that came out of the complaints board, which is now in place. So there's some benefit in that board as well. So they're looking at those, and there's educations, and we've had feedback recently from the team about some of the comms that we're sending before it's got to the complaint, and there's definitely some lessons to be learned there about being more member focused, putting ourselves in the shoes of the members. So yeah, we're picking up on that. But yeah, generally it's, they want their money quicker. Cut into the chase.
Thanks, Chris. That's really helpful. I guess part of it, I'm just coming at it from a with an equalities hat or otherwise. Are there certain demographics because of the types of employment and the types of work and the ages of people that they're getting it or whatever else that may mean there's certain cohorts and members that are greater affected and things like that. So if there's anything, the analysis of the complaints type and that sort of thing is really, really helpful. If it's possible to include, say, some demographics alongside that, maybe we could share that in the future. Thanks a lot, though. Any other questions for Chris, or otherwise we can go to noting, I guess, the report. If everyone can note in the chat.
That's noted, Chairman.
Many thanks. So next is the risk register, I believe. Taryn, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So following the approval of the updated risk policy and the redesigned risk register summary, the new risk dashboard, which was shared with board in the last meeting, this has been presented in the new format. So you'll note that the risk categories have been significantly revised. This aligns with the pension regulator's general code of practice guidance, and all previously identified risks have been mapped to the new categories to ensure continuity and completeness. So period April to June 2025, Annex A has the risk register summary and dashboard in. There are 4 risks currently assessed as exceeding the tolerated risk threshold. They are A2, skills and knowledge gaps within the administering authority, B3, conflicts of interest. Now, these risks have exceeded tolerance due to changes in committee and board membership following the local elections. This occurred during a critical period involving key decisions on pooling and valuation. Both risks are expected to return within tolerance in the next quarter, as new members have been supported by a robust induction programme and training plan. C5, ineffective investment decision making. This risk has exceeded tolerance due to upcoming decision to transition to a new asset pool, with pooling required by March 2026. Once the decision is made, the transition will be managed as a separate project with its own risk register. E1, poor administration, including failure or delays in implementing regulatory changes. This relates to the McLeod remedy deadline of the 31st of August. However, post 30th of June, new regulations introduced a discretion allowing administering authorities to delay inclusion of the McLeod underpin in the annual benefit statements, and this discretion was applied, and the committee and board were informed via email. All other McLeod-related work must continue without unnecessary delay, and LPPA providing weekly updates to fund officers, which we will obviously bring to future board meetings. I should raise at the recent committee meeting, a member raised our rating of risks E4 and E5, which are related to security around member data, and we'd sort of answered that and updated that from a fund perspective with only a small bit outlining what LPPA do. But on reflection, really this should be heavily reflect what LPPA do, and we're in discussions with LPPA to re-rate that risk, review the tolerance and the risk rating, and update our summary. And I'm meeting with the Chief Technology Officer next week, and we're intending to review that risk in the next committee cycle and board cycle. So we're going to take just those 2 risks to the 29th of October committee, and then the subsequent 7th of November board meeting, revise their rating, And then in part 2, the Chief Technology Officer will provide a presentation to give committee and board members assurance of the security measures they have in place to protect member data. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Darren. Gail, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Taryn. No, I'm glad to hear that the committee raised that particular issue, because I had been concerned about that too when I looked at the risk register, and I was looking at it actually from the impact point of view. I think what you were talking about there is the likelihood, but I also thought the impact had possibly been downplayed as well.
Yes, yeah, we agree.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Any other questions for Taryn on the risk register? I guess I just had one comment, Taryn, which was just around the lessons. I know obviously it sounded like there was not major concerns, everything's likely to come back down below the tolerance and stuff. I was just wondering if there was any lessons in terms of future, exceeding tolerance levels and stuff, particularly in terms of those seasonality changing of things. Is there anything we need to do in terms of timeliness of things, or is it just something that will always happen and it's not something to worry about?
I mean, I think it depends on the risk. I think there's some things that you can mitigate and there's some things you just can't control. Regulatory changes are always difficult. They come through quickly, often, sometimes they're backdated. So, yes. I think it just depends on the risk, yeah.
Yeah, I was particularly thinking, say, around new members and things like that. I know we've got obviously quite a robust and extensive training and things, and obviously it takes time for people on board. So I guess, again, that's probably a seasonal thing that is likely to happen. But if there's anything you feel as members we can do to help, reduce that seasonality or whatever, or if there's anything in terms of the processes.
I think that's improved with the board in particular, because we don't have. I think when the board first started, everybody sort of joined on a 4-year tenure, and then we're leaving at the same time. But that's very staggered now, so I don't think it's as high a risk for board. But obviously, the committee is very linked to the local elections, and I don't think that's a risk that we can completely mitigate.
Yeah, thanks, Taryn. Any other questions for Taryn? I guess we can go to noting the report, if we can note in the chat. Thanks.
That's noted, Chairman.
Thanks, Elaine. And then next item is the investment performance report. This is Sandy, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. So my intention here is to give you a little bit of a background on what happened in the markets from 31st of March to 30th of June. Translate that into actually what's happened with the performance of the fund over that period. Very conscious that we're in October now, so I'll give an update on sort of 30th of June to 30th of September to give you a rough idea of where we expect the fund's performance to have done over the last sort of more recent time period. So we cast our minds back at this performance report, as I said, covers 31st of March to the 30th of June. If you just look at how markets performed over that 3-month period, you see equity returns are up about 5%, so pretty decent over a 3-month period. Bonds also up 1-2%, depending on the sort of bonds. You might think, well, that was a pretty decent quarter. Nothing's really happened over that time period because everything has just kind of gone up a little bit. But that doesn't really cover what actually happened over those 3 months. I'm sure everyone here will remember Trump's Liberation Day tariffs very early on in April and the huge market reaction that caused. I think markets, it's fair to say, were probably caught off guard by sort of the scale, so the actual quantum of those tariffs in terms of the large percentages, but also how sweeping, and every part of the world was impacted, regardless if there was if it was populated or not. You'll probably remember a few islands of penguins getting slapped with a 10% tariff. So markets did not react well to that, simply because it was pretty regressive for global trade, would impact global economies, and also the construct of how they got to these tariff numbers didn't exactly leave a positive impression on markets on the competency of the administration. So over the first few sort of weeks, if we were sat here, let's say the middle of April, we would have been talking about, well, from February to that time period, how global markets were down about 20% in equity terms. As it is, the tariffs were rolled back, were scaled back quite significantly. They were paused, delayed, and obviously negotiations have happened since then. And so the immediate reaction of this could, cripple and put the whole global economy into recession receded pretty quickly, which then led to that more positive return over that 3-month period, to where we saw equities being slightly up and bonds doing all right. But as I say, that really does mask the huge volatility and potential worry for a lot of people, especially in early April. So what does that mean sort of for the funds? Well, the fund actually over that 3-month period produced positive returns, 3.2% over the 3-month period. It is pretty positive. That was behind the benchmark, and I'll touch on the reasons for that. Then looking over sort of longer periods, so over the 1 year, so that's the 1 year period to 30th of June, 5% returns. 3 years was 3.8% per annum. All of those time periods, the fund underperformed its benchmark. I guess there are a few key reasons for that. Obviously, there's a few different things going on, but one of the main ones were there was some underperformance by some of the managers. So Dodge and Cox being one of the managers that underperformed over that time period, probably offset by other managers with different styles, like Bailey Gifford offsetting that. So not one of the biggest drivers. One of the main ones will be the fact that the fund has an equity protection strategy in place. Now, the equity protection almost acts a little bit like insurance. So when markets are rising strongly, we would expect it to act as a drag on performance, and so you're seeing that in those numbers. The counter to that, and one of the reasons why we have the equity protection strategy in place, is to manage risk. And certainly, as I say, if we were sat here in the middle of April discussing performance, you'd be very glad that you had the protection strategy in place, because it would have cushioned any of those falls and maintained the strong funding position that the fund is in. But in terms of the numbers going out to 3 years, it has been a drag on performance because equity markets have been very strongly positive over that time frame. Also, the time frame sort of the fund's property holdings and also private equity holdings have underperformed their benchmarks as well. So in aggregate, that's why we've sort of seen some underperformance over the last sort of 1 year period and 3 years. Over the long term, and obviously as a pension fund, the long term is a pretty important consideration. The 5-year performance number is 0.9% per annum above the benchmarks. That's positive. And over the last 10 years, the fund's returned 6.1% per annum against the benchmark of 5% per annum. So that long-term returns are still keeping up with the outperformance, and just an absolute return 6% per annum is pretty strong. And one of the reasons why the fund's in a strong funding position now compared to maybe 10 years ago. So that's markets over that time period and how the fund's done. To give you a little brief update of more recent market conditions, so I'll go from 30th of June, where this data we're discussing ends, to 30th of September, so the third calendar quarter of the year. Equity markets continue to rise and been very positive, so equities are around 9% over that time period. Bonds are sort of broadly flat. If I look at the portfolio, you've kind of got just under half your assets in equities, and then other half is sort of diversified across different asset classes. Equity is obviously positive, as I mentioned. The equity protection strategy does mean you're likely to lag that strong 9%, but I'd still expect equity to be up pretty strongly over the time period, and with everything else flattish, probably some up, some down. I'd expect another positive performance when we report back to committee and board on performance to 30th September. With that, I'll stop. Happy to answer any questions now, although I appreciate we also have a sort of private session as well. We can get into more detail if required by members.
Many thanks, Sandy. Any initial questions on this part of the report? Otherwise, I guess we're picking up in a few moments anyway. So maybe we wait for that bit. I guess we need to note this part before we move on to the next bit. So if we want to note this, we can carry on the conversation. Thanks all.
That's noted, Chairman.
Thanks, that's brilliant. So the next part is the dates for future meetings. So I've got to read this bit out. The board is invited to note the dates for future meetings as follows and consider which ones the meeting could be in person. So currently these are all set as virtual meetings, and I think the idea is that one per year is an opportunity to meet in person. So the 4 dates are the 7th of November and the 12th of December 2025, and then in the new year the 13th of March and the 16th of July. I'm not quite sure what we need to do to note it. Do we need to ask people to get back to an officer, or say now if they have a preference for in person?
It's just something for members to note, Chair. I mean, as you just said, we do aspire to have one of these in person per year, but it is a bit tricky to coordinate. So it's just something for members to think about for the perhaps for the spring or the summer meeting.
Absolutely, thanks, Elaine. So yeah, if you note the dates, you've got them all in your agenda, and then do we need to note this as an item? So I guess we need to note in the chat, right?
You don't need to put it in the chat. No. It's just
okay. Yeah, just for us for our diaries. Brilliant.
For information, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant for information. And so I guess on to any other business for part 1. Is there anything anyone needs to bring up? Guessing not. If so, we can move on to closing part 1. Can I hand back over to you, Elaine?
Chair, you just need to read that statement on your order of business.
Oh yeah, sure, we'll do.
And then we'll confirm once we've also live stream. Thank you.
So that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public are excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information related to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the council, as defined in paragraph 3 and part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act. And the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. And I think we can close the webcasting.
Yeah, we'll just wait. Thank you.